According to the Mayo Clinic website, is it Mayo or Mayo? Is it Mayo? Hoarding disorder is a persistent difficulty discarding or parting with possessions because of a perceived need to save them. A person with hoarding disorder experiences distress at the thought of getting rid of the items. Excessive accumulation of items, regardless of actual value, occurs. About 2 to 6% of the American population suffers from this disorder. So, of course we did what we do best. We televised it.
And all I've got to offer is sensitivity, intelligence, and charm.
Hoarders is an American TV show that started in 2009 and is still going strong to this day. It's typical garbage TV fare that you would find on TLC or A&E. In the same vein as something like Intervention or My 600-Pound Life, etc. You know the type. I watched a ton of this kind of TV growing up, and I honestly thought they were doing good by these people. I mean, at the end of the day, they were getting the help that they needed, right? But then something changed this view. And that something was the, and I'm using this term really generously, live episode of Hoarders. The episode was like 90% various cast members recapping an older episode from an older season, and then telling us that the hoarder from that episode ended up relapsing. They then, of course, compelled the audience to make a moral judgment on this person because they had relapsed. This was honestly pretty typical Hoarders content. But then it got really gross, and not because of the hoard. The crew, under the guise of this being a surprise intervention, it was obviously not. They had been filming in front of this man's house for like an hour at least beforehand. He knew they were there. So under the guise of a surprise intervention, the crew comes into this man's home, cameras rolling, to do what I can only really describe as a public shaming on live television. They walked through the house pointing out various mess, zooming in on dust bunnies, spending an inordinate amount of time in this man's bathroom, while the hoarder, a man named Richard, looked down at his feet the entire time, muttering, "Yes, I know, it's bad." Every so often, Richard would look directly into the camera with these eyes that were just so full of regret and sorrow, it just broke your heart.
And that makes me wonder for you, Richard, what's more important to you, your family or your stuff?
No, my family.
Your family?
Yes. And I understand and I feel bad about the whole program because I've been years of putting up with this and I hate it with a passion.
The whole thing was just incredibly upsetting. No one was actually helped, not even in the way that they usually do in an episode of Hoarders. There was no cleanup, they just walked around pointing a camera at this man's messy house. It became very obvious that everything in this episode was for the sake of shock value, for ratings, for entertainment, all at the expense of this poor man's mental illness. After this episode, I took a closer look at the show Hoarders. Is it just harmless entertainment? Is it actually doing a societal good by getting these people help? Or is it morally wrong? Let's take a closer look. Do you like that segue? The general format of every episode of Hoarders goes as follows. We learn about someone suffering from hoarding and their backstory from their friends and various loved ones. Then a psychologist goes to the hoarder's house, introduces themselves, and takes a tour of the property. The next day, an organizing specialist and their team arrive at the property to start a 3-day cleanup. The cleanup is either successful or it's not. The psychologist offers the hoarder aftercare services, and the episode ends. why don't we talk about the psychologists while we're here? Kind of surprisingly, when I looked into the credentials of the psychologists featured on the show, most of them are pretty qualified from a technical standpoint. From the standpoint that they're willing to do this on TV for entertainment, well, I'll let you decide that one for yourself. But from a purely credentials technical standpoint, most of them hold specialized PhDs and are associated with reputable institutions. But what's the deal with that aftercare they offer at the end of each episode? Rather than paying those who appear on the show, Hoarders offers them 6 to 8 months of paid-for aftercare services. I couldn't find a lot of information about what this aftercare actually entails. It seems to vary from case to case. To me, this really seems like the bare minimum that the show could do for these people after broadcasting their mental breakdowns and their disorder in general. And yes, while they offer aftercare, during the runtime of the episode, they implement this pseudo time limit for the Hoarder's recovery. We only have 3 days to clean this house! It seems, to me, that putting that kind of pressure on someone suffering from a mental health crisis might not help the situation. But then again, I'm not a mental health expert. If someone watching this is and wants to correct me, please, by all means, go ahead. Before we move on, there's one more thing from the mental health perspective that I'd really like to bring up here, and it's the sound effects. Hoarders has the same problem that a lot of garbage reality TV has, and that's the overuse of dramatic sound effects. Someone crying doesn't need to be followed up by some ominous sound in the distance. Ooh. People suffering from hoarding disorder or any mental health issue should not be seen as scary. They aren't scary. They already struggle enough with being seen as capable, empathetic people. They don't need your dun dun duns making it even worse. Just like another often marginalized group. Let's talk about the role of economic class in Hoarders. If you watch enough Hoarders, you'll start to recognize that a lot of the participants come from financially insecure situations. And oftentimes it can come off as very, let's watch the poor people have family drama over their financial situation as a form of entertainment for us, the not poor people. According to a study done by psychologist David Tolan, who's, if you could even believe it, one of the psychologists featured on Hoarders. He was actually like the one that hosted the live episode. The gist of the study was that hoarding disorder is intricately linked with poverty. Unsurprisingly, it all comes down to resource insecurity. Hoarding because you never know when you might lose everything. Or maybe you have lost everything in the past and now you're desperately clinging to the possessions that you still have. As I mentioned earlier, Hoarders, unlike its twin program, Hoarding Buried Alive on TLC, does not pay its participants, offering aftercare instead. In my mind, this answers the question, why would anyone go on the show if it's so exploitative? They go on the show because it's a way they can pay for treatment with their dignity. They get a glimpse of hope. To get help, they just have to let the world in for entertainment. Something Hoarders is like really great at is unearthing deep dark family secrets and then like projecting them out into the entire world. Now, don't get me wrong, sometimes secrets are kept. I remember one episode where the hoarder only discloses that something horrible happened to her. During the runtime of the show, she comes clean about it to her family, but that information is never disclosed to the audience. So I guess, 1 point Hoarders, you pwned me. Do people still say pwned? Pwned! Hoarders totally pwned Ellen on YouTube. But, on the other hand, The crew can oftentimes be seen barging into people's homes and private spaces, seemingly without consent. Cameras rolling while the hoarder is either sleeping or otherwise occupied. While it's likely that this is all staged, it's not sending like the best message. If someone is sleeping, you probably shouldn't shove a camera in their face to wake them up. Maybe that's just a me thing. Maybe I don't know. Another thing the show does in regards to privacy that I kind of hate is this whole feeling of you should be embarrassed. Taking a tour of someone's home and openly gasping at every dusty corner. This kind of rhetoric is obviously for the audience's sake and doesn't aid the hoarder's recovery at all. And I just think that's kind of icky. I don't know. Let me know. In more recent years, they've also been doing this thing where one of the cleaning specialists will stay at the hoarder's home the night before cleanup starts. And like, okay, say the subject of the episode microwaves a piece of pizza on a paper plate. We zoom in on the specialist's face. We hear some ominous music. How could they? That's just disgusting. But like, that's just like normal life stuff. The specialist is always playing everything up during these sleepovers. Oh, I could hear the rats scurrying around. Oh, there were bugs everywhere.
This house, man, as soon as you walk in, well, you see the spider webs immediately. And then it's just trash.
Which is probably true. But why have this segment at all? It's pretty obviously just meant to be shock value about how these mentally ill people live, instead of in any way being a part of the recovery process. I used to really enjoy this show, and I really thought that this show and other shows like it were really helping the people that appeared on them. So I'm not here to judge you if you came to this video thinking the same thing. Or even if you're leaving this video still thinking that. I'm not here to pass judgment. But after that live episode, something finally clicked in my mind that this show might not be as ethical as I originally thought it was. There's 1.5 million ways to provide these people with the resources and aid that they need. Why do we have to make it entertainment? A mental health crisis shouldn't be turned into a commodity for content. So, next time you're watching Hoarders, maybe consider changing the channel. If you still have channels. Do people still have cable? Alright. That was the Hoarders episode. This was the Hoarders video. I'm not calling my videos episodes. I'm not that up my own ass. It kind of turned into more of a beast than I was expecting it to be, but it's something that's been on my mind, so I told myself I would take it easy after spooky month, and that was a lie. Real quick, one announcement. Since I'm going back to only uploading every other Friday, I've decided that I'm going to start streaming on the Fridays where I'm not uploading a video. Does that make sense? So basically, the schedule will be like video streaming. Yeah. Weeks without videos, I will be streaming on youtube.com. It's mostly just chilling and chatting, maybe playing some video games once I figure out how to make that work. If you hung out during the stream last Friday, you know what I mean. I definitely need to figure that out. So be sure to check in for that if you're interested. If you like this video, do the usual, the liking, the subscribing, the sharing, etc. Yummy, yummy. Yummy, yummy. Let's feed that algorithm. I'm so sorry. If you didn't like this video, please pass it on to 10 people in your contact list, or else it'll haunt you for 100 years. Bye. I'm sorry if you can hear David having a big boy job meeting in the other room.